I got something special today. I know what you're thinking. It's the white Fractal Define R6, right? Nope. Fractal Define S2. Of course, you probably knew that because you probably read the title. You know what you're getting. Why do you watch a video that you already know what you're doing? This is the Fractal Define S2. It's new. The R6 came out before the S2. This is the S2. The S2 is perhaps more aimed at custom loop water cooling in that it comes with a bracket. So the Fractal Define R6, I've already taken a look at. In fact, I built Linus Torvalds' computer, which is right next to this one, in a gunmetal version of the Define R6. The Define R6 is flexible. You've got some options at the front here. It's a tower case. In fact, the S2 is exactly the same dimensions. So a lot of the same accessories work, you know, the vertical GPU mount, the optional, USB Type-C front panel. This one happens to have a USB-C front panel. But the S2 has a little bit different innards. It's got this sort of grill thing where you can install custom loop water cooling, and it comes with the brackets for a reservoir so that you can mount one inside. Now, of course, being level 1, it's like, don't tell me what to do with my case. I don't, custom loop water cooling, we're gonna put a tower cooler in there. You've got 185 millimeters of clearance for a tower cooler. But of course, you've got all the same options for all-in-one or custom loop radiators. You can put a radiator in the bottom, in the front, in the top. You've got a lot of options for radiators. And honestly, I'm probably gonna put some kind of all-in-one cooler in this case. Now, Fractal also makes some really nice all-in-one coolers. I'm using Threadripper. You know, I'm always building Threadripper systems because 16 cores, 32 cores, I gotta have all those cores. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be alive. And I want a powerful system that will also keep really quiet. We got the Sapphire Vega 64 in here. It's a triple slot card. It's a pretty big, beefy card, generates a lot of heat. So in testing heat load with this machine, this is my setup. I'm using a Gigabyte X399 Designaire motherboard, the Threadripper 1950X. I think I swapped that. I swapped it for the 2950X so I could do the PBO, the Precision Boost Overdrive, to see how well it works. This case comes with 3 Fractal fans, 3 white fans. So 2 in the front, 1 in the rear. Other than that, I didn't add any other fans to the system for this base configuration. But in its final form, I'm probably gonna add another 140 millimeter fan to the bottom and put a dual, like a 280 millimeter radiator in the front, something like that. But for now I'm running the Noctua Tower Cooler, the big one for Threadripper, made for TR4 with the Noctua Brown fans. I've got 32 gigs of memory in here right now, but I have had the 128 gigs of memory in here. That worked really well. It's modular. There's not, honestly, like footprint and size, there's really not a lot different between the S2 and the R6. In fact, they're exactly the same dimensions, so I've got exactly the same options. If you don't want a glass side panel, you don't have to get a glass side panel. The other big difference is the front. The front does not open up on the S2. With the R6, if you still want to rock an optical drive or something in a 5 1/4 inch bay, you can use the 5 1/4 inch bay with the R6. With the S2, there's no 5 1/4 inch bay, doesn't have one. And that's just the way that it is. The front does have optional removable mesh dust filters, so you can pop the front off and remove the mesh dust filters, and the filters are on the sides here instead of being on the front like it is on the R6. So if you like the S2 and you're like, nah, I would want to change a thing or two or whatever, definitely give the R6 a look. But for the S2, for custom loop water cooling, or maybe you're not going to run a ton of 3.5 inch drives, definitely give the S2 a look. It does have room for up to 3 2.5 inch drives on the back side, where you can't really see it in here, but it's behind the behind the thing where the custom loop reservoir would go if you wanted to mount something like that there. The cutouts for that, because it's got a bunch of screw holes, also makes it really convenient for doing case mods. So in my case, I've got 8 terabytes of flash. Yes, this is 8 terabytes of serial attached SCSI flash. And so with a little 3D printed bracket that I made so I can set it next to the fans, I can actually screw this backplane directly to the mounting solution that the S2 provides, and all of a sudden I've got 8 terabytes of flash. Now, ironically, it does actually have 4 built-in 2.5 inch bays. So I actually did not even need to do that to get this to run, but these are serial attached SCSI. It's not SATA, it's a different connector. It's a solid connector instead of a segmented connector. And so this backplane that I have out of an old server, it's just a thing. It's just 8 terabytes of flash thing. When you have a system that generates a lot of heat, managing the noise from the fans is really sort of what it's all about. And so the S2 has the front baffle, and it has the sound dampening, and it has the bottom intake filter, and it has a front filter, well, 2 small front filters on the side, and it works well for what it does. There's also a removable panel here in the front, so if you want to run a 360 millimeter radiator, you can pop that out, and you've got all kinds of room for custom tubing and all that kind of stuff. If you're going to run a 280 millimeter radiator, you can take that out, leave it in, whatever you want to do. In my case, I'm going to take it out because I'm running the 280 millimeter radiator as an exhaust. At least that's my plan. It's a very similar setup to what I did for Linus Torvalds 32 core Threadripper system, except this is a 16 core 2950X. So a little different setup, but hey, I've got my flash RAID array, got my Optane, got NVMe if I need it. I got PCI Express lanes for days. On the front panel, you've got 2 USB 2.0 ports, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and a USB reversible Type-C, which plugs into the motherboard, in that case the Designator X399. It works great. You've got power and reset, and the thing that I like about the power and reset LED is that it's very subdued. A lot of cases have like the daylight brightness LEDs. If you have a dark room, this LED is not going to be blinding, but even in a really well lit room, you can still see that the LED is on and blinking in the case of, hard drive activity. And it's all powered by a Seasonic power supply. In this case, I think this is the 850 watt. Yeah, this is the 850 watt Air Touch power supply, because you don't need 1,000 watts for a 2950, even with this graphics card. It's crazy. So good job, Fractal. Fractal really, the build quality, the features, it sits tall enough that even if it's on carpet, it would breathe okay from the bottom. It can always sit a little taller, especially if you've got a high pile carpet, something like that, but it does pretty well. It's got a great shroud setup for the power supply, got a lot of breathability. Got optional accessories like the right angle graphics card mount. So if you wanted to mount your graphics card at a right angle and show it off in the tempered glass side panel, you totally can. This is the white version of the case, which the white version of the case I wasn't sure about, but since I bought the the gunmetal version, it's like, well, maybe. Okay. I get why somebody would want to build in this, especially if you're going to show off something with RGB. The lighting works a lot better in this configuration, but for me, it's like, oh yeah, neat, there's a light show inside my case, and then I just shove it under my desk and forget about it. But that's how I roll. One other thing that I will mention about the motherboard mounting solution, so this is the Gigabyte Designator X399. That is a standard ATX motherboard. And as you can see, the rubber grommets are perfectly set up for that. But, it's Fractal, it's gonna maybe a little bit higher end case, maybe a little bit bigger motherboard. Larger motherboards, like eATX motherboards, will stick over your rubber grommet holes. And so the same is true of the S2. If you have a motherboard that's a little bit wider, it's gonna potentially cover your grommet holes. And so you may have to reconfigure or do something different. Fortunately, the modular area, you could remove it completely if you really wanted to and then route all your cables that way. But in the case of using the Gigabyte X399 Aorus Extreme motherboard, it didn't completely cover the rubber grommets, it only covered them about halfway. So I was still able to route my cables through the rubber grommets. I just didn't have quite as much room as I do in the Designator, or with the Designator motherboard in this case. So maybe if I wanted to complain about one little thing, I would complain that it would be nice if we shoved the rubber grommets all the way to the front, and maybe even a C-shaped cutout as opposed to the hole cutout, but that would probably weaken the structure of the case a little bit. So I'm just gonna stop pretending to be an armchair case designer expert dude and just say, hey, good job, Fractal. Of course, the top's also modular. So just like all the other cases, the top is removable. If you want to run a radiator in the top, you can pop the vent out. Let's get the Modu vent system, I think is what they used to call it. I don't know if they still call it. Don't shoot me if that's not what they call it. But so this is a solid piece of metal, but there's an air vent in here, so you can separate the air vent and the top and run the air vent up there. And that's definitely something I recommend doing. If you're gonna do like a 2990 build with a 360 radiator, putting the radiator in the top does help the cooling quite a bit, but the radiator then sort of sits against this side of the case, and it can block access to your RAM slots, or it can block access to some of the other stuff on the motherboard. I definitely prefer having the radiator in the front, but having done a lot of experimentation, having the radiator in the front exhaust and having the bottom be all intake, that works really well. The rear intake or exhaust, it seems to work a little better as exhaust, but it depends on your fan configuration, so I don't know. And that's really the only negative thing I could come up with. All in all, the Fractal Define S2 is out. So custom loop cooling or other insanity that you're working on, get 340mm fans with this sucker. It's pretty exciting. Honestly, I love Fractal products. They're always well built. They're always, you know, they've always got a lot of thought put into them. A little bit of a Fractal fanboy, so don't take my word for it. You know, look at some other reviews, see what other people are saying. But I think unless you need, I mean, because in the R6, you could put like 6 or 8 3.5-inch drives if you really wanted to, and 2.5-inch drives, of course. And so something like this, you know, you could hide this. You could hide the 8 terabytes of flash hard drives could be hidden away so that you can't see them. You could bring the side over, but I mean, if you got 8 terabytes of flash, you might as well flaunt it, right? I've built the systems in the wrong cases. I've got to switch everything from one case to, yeah. I'm Wendell, I'm signing out, and you can find me in the Level 1 forums. Good job, Fractal. Nicely done.